Alright, we're on attraction tips for men. Why guys need to stop talking so much. And we have a tendency to think that we should be talking and communicating all the time. Or that's what we're led to believe. And that's what we grew up with. But I'm going to explain why. Why guys shouldn't be talking so much when you're in a dating context, a dating environment, or you're in a relationship environment. And that actually over communicating and talking too much will ruin a woman's attraction for you, and how talking a little bit less will actually improve her attraction for you. By nature, men are the ones that communicate a little bit less as women. So we know biologically that women, throughout the course of a day, I think women talk like 2,000, 3,000 more words than men throughout the day. Women communicate more, of course. They are more socially calibrated than we are. They're designed for that. But you hear it in our culture, in our narrative, growing up. You see it in movies, you see it in TVs. It's like, oh, men just need to communicate more. Men just need to talk more. No. Don't buy into that. That's a lie. That's nonsense. You don't need to communicate more. But it all depends on what you're communicating and what you're talking about. For example, you're going out on a date with the woman for the first time. Who's the one that should be communicating? Her. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying the dynamic of that interaction will go off a lot better if you, the man, are the one asking the questions and then letting her do the talking. The one who is asking the questions and the conversation is always the one in control of the conversation. And as the man, that needs to be you. You need to be in control and in charge of the dynamic of that interaction throughout the date. If she asks questions about you, you answer. But keep it simple, keep it short, and keep it vague. Maintain mystery. As the man, if you're the one talking throughout the entire conversation, now not giving her space to talk, you're instantly going to bore her. And you'll be able to see that. You'll be able to pick up on those nonverbals. If she's always reaching for her phone and looking at her phone and looking at the time and not really engaging you, and you're not giving space to talk, and you're like literally talking and throwing all your cards out on the table and showing her everything. There's nothing interesting about you. There's nothing to get to know. If you're showing her everything about you on the first interaction, the first night together, what is there for her to buy into after that? Nothing. There's nothing to buy into. But you'll hear stuff like, oh, you're such a great conversationalist. If you're the one asking the questions and letting her speak when you're really not doing anything. You're just asking questions and letting her do the majority of the talking. And then you're stuff like, I've been talking about myself all night. Let's talk more about you. And that's when you know that you're on the right track. When you're, for example, that's specifically in a first meeting context, the first couple date context. Well, if you're living together and you're in a relationship context, you're like having a family together, then how do you communicate? One, you're not always going to get along. There's always going to be bumps in the road. You're always going to have little arguments. You don't need to address every single little argument, every little uncomfortable bickering moment that you have. You don't need to address that and talk about it. And sometimes what's best is to not address the uncomfortable situation and back off, go do your own thing. But not every little argument needs to be resolved. the best way to resolve a little argument is to stop talking about it. You don't, and no, because it's uncomfortable. We don't like that, uncomfortable feeling, and there's tension between us. Sometimes that tension is good. Most of the time, it's actually good. Because you're not always going to feel great and wonderful and attracted to each other every single second, especially when you're living under the same roof. That allowing time and space to just let both your emotions come down and just let it go. Obviously, if it's a big situation, it's a big argument, you got to address it. But every little thing, you don't need to over communicate every little thing. Like, oh, the best solution to problems in a relationship is to communicate. No, it's not. It all depends what the situation is and what the context is of what you're communicating. Because if you're over communicating on every little problem, that's actually going to create more problems. It's going to be more frustrating, and that's going to turn her off way more. And it's going to annoy you. You don't need to communicate on every little thing. On the big things, yes. When it comes to money, when it comes to finances, when it comes to raising children, yeah, you got to talk and communicate and have those conversations. But those little things, those little interactions, you don't need to talk. You don't need to over communicate every little thing. Because creating that tension by not, sometimes people don't like that awkward silence, that awkward tension between a man and a woman. It's uncomfortable, we don't like it, but it's actually really beneficial, and it's actually a good thing by doing that. And it's a good thing because she doesn't know what you're thinking. She doesn't know what you're feeling. And guess what? She doesn't need to know every single feeling that you have all the time. She doesn't need to know that. Despite what she says, oh, you should talk more about your feelings, you should communicate more. No, she doesn't need to know every little thing. And it actually creates an air of mystery and intrigue. Because the more you over communicate every little thing and talk about every little feeling, the more that's going to bore her. The worst thing in a relationship is boredom. Don't bore her. And you do that by not communicating, by keeping silent in the right times to be silent. And obviously, if it's a big problem, it's a big issue, yeah, you gotta talk about it. If there's any kind of rudeness or being disrespectful, yeah, you gotta talk about it. But every kind of little uncomfortable interaction, you just gotta assess it and judge it on a case-by-case basis and not have to talk about it. You'll see, by actually not talking about it and just keeping silent and just doing your own thing and following your hobbies, you're gonna see the emotions are gonna come down, and then she's gonna initiate that conversation with you. And guys have a tendency, and I've done this before, where we're very uncomfortable when we know something's uncomfortable, when there's no this uncomfortable tension between the man and the woman. We don't like that awkwardness and that tension. We don't like that. We want to solve that problem instead of just accepting it and moving on from it. No, we got to solve this problem right away. No, because it's not necessarily a problem. Because if you just keep your distance and go do your own thing for about an hour or two, it's no longer a problem. It's all based on emotional fluctuation. That's all it is. And allowing emotions to come down, allowing her emotions to come down, it stops becoming an issue. But you make it more of an issue by not allowing those emotions to come down, by over communicating, by talking. Now you need to be able to judge it on a case-by-case basis. I need to understand that to despite what she says. Your over communication is not attractive. And if you don't develop that bad habit by thinking you need to communicate with her all the time. Every little thing. Because what's actually attractive, which actually brings her to you, draws her into you, is by her not knowing. And I'm not saying be a closed book all the time, but give little, especially in the beginning part of dating, give little pieces of information about you slowly. Let her fish, let her work for you. Let her dig it out of you. If you don't let her dig it out of you and just let it go right away, well, there's nothing interesting. It's boring. There's nothing to know anymore because she knows everything already. And give her the enjoyment. Give her the satisfying journey of getting to know you over a long period of time. And if you're living together and you already do know each other, just be aware that not every single thing needs a conversation and needs to be addressed. And guys sometimes are afraid to test that and to be able. I was afraid to test that and experiment. Like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. Well, you've seen what happens when you over communicate, right? It just creates boredom and staleness in the relationship. Try not communicating. When I say not communicating, it doesn't mean stop responding when she asks you a question. What it means is stop voluntarily offering every little information about you when she's not asking. If she's not asking stuff for you, you don't need to say anything. If she is asking, give little pieces of information and try that and see how it goes. And don't be afraid to experiment on those interactions. And on that note, thank you so much for watching. If this video is of value to you, like and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good one.